welcome to the mousiemakes podcast. I'm Helen and I live in Durham in the northeast of England, and it's really lovely that you've popped in to see me today. Usually I will be showing you things that I've made, sort of crafty, arty things. Today is a little bit different. It's one of those ones where I'm going to chat to you about something that interests me, and although we are going to still make something, so towards the end, we are going to pop into the kitchen to make a really lovely lemony dessert. I like making things with lemons, don't I? If you've been here before, made a few lemony things now. Anyway, that's what we'll do before we finish. But today, my topic of interest that I thought, that you might like to hear a bit about is solitude and also kind of silence. They sort of go hand in hand, really. And I wanted to share with you an experience that I had a couple of years ago. So I'm going to accompany my chat with some photos that I took when I was off on my solitary experience. And at the time I didn't really take videos of things. So these are just photos, although I'm going to try a new skill today, which is to make the photos perhaps look like they're moving. Anyway, I hope you'll enjoy that and I hope you enjoy listening. So, as I said, I thought I'd chat to you today about a topic that really interests me, and that is solitude and silence. If you've watched my podcast about the happy introvert, you'll know that I thrive, as I know many of you do, too, on spending time alone, away from any unwanted stimuli. So in my podcast today, I'm sharing my experiences of a solo trip that I made. And as I said, I'm going to share some photos from that time as well. And I'm also going to focus a bit more on the positive benefits of spending time alone. Now, I have to say from the outset that my feelings about solitude are taken from the perspective of someone who lives with two lovely people and who has a few special friends. And although I have experienced short periods of loneliness in my past, it's never been a permanent thing. So just to make it clear, let's start with a couple of definitions. So first of all, loneliness. So I feel that loneliness is when someone is alone but not happy about it. They're feeling sad because they would like to have more frequent and meaningful interactions with other people. Solitude, on the other hand, is being alone, often by choice, and actually enjoying it. So in the earlier part of 2019, I had a few things happening that were causing me all sorts of negative emotions, and I started to feel in real need of clearing my head. And I felt that one of the ways that I could try to tackle this was to spend some time alone. At around the same time, I'd come across a couple of very interesting books. One called Silence in the Age of Noise by a Norwegian explorer called Erling Kagge, and another book called A Book of Silence by Sarah Maitland. And I can highly recommend both books, although the Sarah Maitland book is a little harder to get into than the first one I mentioned. Erling Kagge once spent 50 days walking across Antarctica in complete isolation and with a broken radio. And he used this experience to think more deeply about the effects of being silent and alone. He wrote, "Silence in itself is rich. It is exclusive and luxurious, a key to unlock new ways of thinking." And he also said, "Shutting out the world is not about turning your back on your surroundings, but rather the opposite. It is seeing the world a bit more clearly, staying a course, and trying to love your life." In Sarah Maitland's book, there's an exploration of the cultural aspects of silence, such as the life of hermits, past and present. And alongside this, she explores her own experiences of seeking silence and solitude. And she describes her search for an ever-deepening silence in ever-remoter locations. So after making a start on reading this book, I became really fascinated with the idea of seeing what it might be like to be a hermit. I decided I didn't want to do it for too short a time, but not too long either. So I thought that maybe 5 nights away might be just the right length of time. So I chose an off-grid camping hut for my accommodation, not far from the Northumbrian village of Alnmouth on the northeast coast of England. And exactly 2 years ago, as I'm recording this today, I went off on my adventure into solitude. I'd agreed with my family that although I wasn't going to phone anyone while I was away, I would send a message each morning to say that I was okay. My phone was the only device that I took, and only for emergencies and to send my daily message home. I had no plans to listen to music or audiobooks or engage with social media or anything else. I will admit to feeling a little apprehensive about my trip, especially the idea of being all alone through the night times in a little hut with no one else nearby. There were just 2 other huts beside the one that I stayed in, which for most of my stay were unoccupied. But in fact, I felt safe and secure at all times, and I just loved being right next to the seashore. Strangely, the time that I felt most at peace was at dusk, when you would have thought that I'd be feeling a bit more on edge with the onset of darkness, but I didn't. I just loved having the chance to slow right down, go with the natural rhythms of the days, with no time pressures or deadlines or schedules. I rarely even felt the need to know what time it was. So I spent some of my time at the hut, reading, doing crochet. I just took one project with me, making some prayer flag bunting from Emma Leith's Mindful Crochet book. And I would write down my thoughts or simply just sit and look out to sea. Some of my time was spent wandering about on the beach, and I often stopped to look at things more closely than usual, really looking properly at the intricate details of a tiny shell, for example, or just watching the birds or just watching the waves. In Sarah Maitland's book, she wrote, "I walked in silence and soon came to recognise that although in the past I had walked and thought, I had never really paid attention." I was very comfortable and cosy in the hut, and I thought how luxurious it would have seemed to a hermit hundreds of years ago. Although, personally, I soon missed having mains electricity and gas, running water and a normal toilet instead of the composting toilet that was there. I did have lighting from solar panels, but I had nowhere to charge my phone, which did pose a slight problem. But there was a wood-burning stove as well, although during my stay it was warm enough not to need it. For a little while, I had voices niggling in my head, questioning whether I was a bit weird for trying out a hermit's life, in a very small way. It's true that as a society we tend to stigmatise people who choose to spend time on their own. However, I've never been one for simply following the crowd, and I knew that what I was doing was right for me, so it didn't really matter what anyone else thought. For the whole 5 days, I simply enjoyed going at an easy, unhurried pace, moving from one thing to another as the mood took me. I'd set no expectations for what I hoped to get out of the experience. I hadn't done it to try and find myself, whatever that means, or run away from anything, or even to search for silence. But I did want to process the inevitable changes in life and create some space in my head. But mostly, I just wanted to see what it would like to just be and be still. So, what did I learn from my 5 days of solitude? Well, it confirmed my feeling that I can be completely content spending time in my own company. I learnt that solitude makes me feel really calm and allows all sorts of thoughts to tumble in and out of my head without them feeling like a burden or worrying or thinking I have to do anything about them. I also learnt that when I'm alone, at least, I do like my home comforts, and that I wouldn't have liked being a hermit in the old days. When I returned home, things did feel a little different. I felt that I'd drawn a line between what had gone before and what the future might hold. I suppose, gained some kind of calm acceptance of how things stood. I didn't undergo any kind of miracle transformation, but my head definitely felt much clearer and more open to accepting change and moving forward. So, if I got the chance to repeat this experience of solitude, I would definitely take it, and probably for longer, maybe for a week or two. Though, if I do it again, I'd like to have accommodation with modern amenities. I love my family and my close friends, especially as they accept me just as I am, with all my little quirks. And I'm very lucky to have people to share holidays and other occasions with, but part of me has got a deep need to spend some time alone, just, as a recluse, so that I can recharge and declutter my mind. So I am wholeheartedly a lover of solitude, but always knowing that when I want company and friendship, it will be there. And I do feel incredibly grateful for that. So just to finish my chatting, my top 4 benefits of choosing to spend some time in silent solitude are these. So firstly, I think it's a great way of decluttering the mind. You can allow thoughts just to float in and out of your head without needing to do anything about them at that very moment. Secondly, you'll find a deep pleasure when doing something that you love doing, such as crochet, knitting, sewing, drawing, colouring, painting, or even just watching the nature around you. Thirdly, you'll become much more perceptive of the details of everything around you and gain a greater appreciation and gratitude for simple everyday things. And finally, it just allows you to slow right down and to recharge your batteries and restore your feelings of well-being. So let's go off to the kitchen now, and we're going to make chilled lemon flan, which is a very, very easy dessert. It's one of those ones with a biscuit crumb base, and then I think just 3 simple ingredients for the filling. This comes from, I think, the first cookery book I was given as a gift when I was, I don't know, how old was I, about 17 or 18. It's called the Hamlin All Colour Cookbook. And I was quite amused to see the photo inside, which, if you are a fan of cooking programmes on British TV, you might recognise who it is. It's a famous Mary Berry. Yeah, so she was one of the authors of this book. It was published in 1970. So anyway, so lots of my first baking experiences were from this book. So here we are. I'm going to make chilled lemon flan. Well, it's that time again. Time for me to say goodbye to you. Thanks ever so much for spending some of your time with me again. Another big thank you to everybody who's been writing comments after each of my podcasts. It's really, really lovely to, well, I mean, it's really nice for me for you to say such nice things about what I've been showing you, what I've been doing. But yeah, it's just lovely to get to know some of you. you know, as the weeks go by, I've got to know a little bit more about some of you, and that's really, really nice. That's partly why I'm doing this, to have this sort of communication with the world out there, people, like-minded people. So thank you, everyone. But thank you if you've just been watching. That's great as well. So I'll be back next week with another, probably more normal podcast, well, showing you or catching you up with all the things I've been making and doing. But until then, take care, keep busy, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.